So, hey everyone, this is Brad Berzer for Spirit of Cecilia, and I've got Rylee McDonald of Advent Horizon here. Very excited about this. This is my first Zoom interview, which I realize I'm like 6 years behind on technology. But this is great. Rylee, why don't you introduce yourself if you don't mind?
Yeah, hey Brad, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today, man. I am Rylee McDonald. I play with the band Advent Horizon out of Salt Lake City, Utah, and we are just about to release a new album. So doing the whole press cycle thing and getting the word out.
That's great. Yeah, so there are several things I want to talk to you about.
Yeah.
And so let me I hate to I'm embarrassed to admit this. I'm 58. I'm an old prog guy. I've been a progger. I had two older brothers, one who was 8 years older, one who was 5 years older. So they introduced me to Yes all the way back in 1973 when I was
Awesome.
only six. But so I've been listening to prog for, well, roughly 52 years at this point. But I'm embarrassed to admit, Rylee, I wasn't familiar with Advent Horizon until I got the new release. And I loved it. I mean, I absolutely love it. And so
Awesome,
I'm
man. Thank you.
embarrassed that, I mean, I can't believe I've gone the last, what, 15, 20 years without knowing you guys. And so I immediately, I've got live at Prog Stock now. I got a
Yes.
cell to call home. I got
Yes.
immured.
Wow.
So yeah,
You you
I'm
you dove in
slowly.
head first, man. That's
Well,
awesome.
I mean, I loved it. I loved what you're doing. So, why don't you talk about it a little bit? So, again, for most of my readers, and they're not going to be as familiar with you yet either, but they will be now. So, why don't you talk a little bit about, Advent Horizon? I assume you guys, it's a play on Event Horizon. And I assume, from what you've talked about, you guys have a bit of a religious background. So maybe you could talk about some of that and what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. So where to start, man? So Advent Horizon is a band that I started when I was in high school, would have been around 2006, 2007, with my good friend Mike Lofgreen. So he was drums and I was guitar, and we had recently discovered the band Rush, and out of a mutual obsession for Rush, decided, hey, let's start our own band and see what happens. And it's kind of amazing that it's been the two of us ever since. For I mean, that's going on 2 decades now that
Fantastic.
Mike and I have been together writing music, releasing albums, and of course it started as a high school hobby. We were just doing it for fun, and at a certain point we realized, hang on a second, like we're actually pretty decent at this. Let's try to do something bigger. Let's try to make our way in the world, and that's kind of where we've been ever since. Just the long climbing the very very long ladder to see how high we can make it in the music world. And there's been a lot of side quests along the way, a lot of tangents that have, maybe led us a little bit away from Advent Horizon to other projects that we've worked with. So we've had over the years probably half a dozen different bands that we've been a part of,
Oh,
Mike and
wow.
I, that have. We had a Pink Floyd tribute band for quite a while we were playing a lot of big shows here in Utah. We had a pop punk band for a little while called Beach Death that we released a record with. It was a whole lot of fun. And then that band kind of fell out during COVID. But constant through all of it has been Advent Horizon as these other bands have come and gone. And I think that's because while we like a lot of music, I'm into all sorts of stuff, new wave and pop and metal and
Sure.
blues and jazz. Like we like a lot of things, but at the end of the day, progressive rock has always been home base for us. So no matter where we end up in the music world, we always find ourselves saying, "Hey, let's go write some more prog rock songs." And every time we do that, it becomes the next Advent Horizon album. And yeah, I mean, not surprising to me that you haven't heard of us up to this point. We're not a household name in the prog world by any means. Of course, we aspire to eventually be that. But at the moment, we're just having a lot of fun writing the music that we are inspired to write, and seeing kind of where it takes us. You mentioned the name Advent Horizon.
Yeah.
So, funny story about that. We when we were in high school, we were at the time we were a three piece at the time, and our bass player at the time, who's no longer in the band, we have a new bass player now, but our at the time bass player, we were practicing at his house, and we were in the search of a band name. We didn't know what to call ourselves yet. And in the middle of our band practice, our bass player's younger brother, who at the time was probably 13 years old, runs into our practice and goes, "Guys, I found your band name. It's the closest point you can get to a black hole before you get sucked in. It's called Advent Horizon." And we all said, "Whoa, that's so cool. That's our band name now." And so we went with it, thinking that he was correct, not realizing he was wrong. And the problem was by the time no, I think everybody was like too shy to point out to us that our name was wrong, and we didn't do our research. It was like 5 years before anybody said to us, "Hey, do you realize your name is wrong? It's actually Event Horizon." And
Well,
by that
Riley, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But by that time, like we had gone so long with that name, we had released an album, we had done a bunch of shows, we had a local following. It was too late to change it to Event. So we kept Advent Horizon, which I think has actually ended up being a good call overall because when you type in Advent Horizon on Google, we are the first thing that comes
Yeah,
up. There's
you
no
are.
other
You
Advent
are.
Horizon. It's just us. So it's worked out in the end, but kind of weird.
I really that's fantastic, and thanks for telling me that. That made my morning. So it was a 13-year-old who did this.
Yes, yes.
That's awesome.
And
So
I
I
haven't
really
actually told him about that. I
oh
should
you'll
reach
have
back out
to.
to him someday and hey, just so you
Yeah.
know, like we're still playing under the name that you named us incorrectly.
Well, I wondered. I mean, I thought maybe you guys started off as a Christian prog band. So with
You're
the
not
name
the first.
Advent, okay, yeah. So, but that's accidental.
Yes, it is definitely
Okay,
accidental. We
okay.
did all of us grew up Mormon here in Utah,
I
which is
figure I
anybody who
figured you were
knows anything
LDS.
about
Yeah,
Utah, it's not a big surprise.
yeah.
Um, we all grew up LDS. All of us have left the church at varying stages. Um, so as of right now, none of us are Mormon anymore. And I'm the most recent one to fall away. Myself and my wife, Kristen, who's also in the band, we kind of had a gradual falling out with the church over the last 5 to 8 years. And that is in large part what our new album is about. It's about
Yeah,
me
okay.
processing my feelings on my upbringing, the culture and community that I was born into, and feelings on kind of shedding that and moving on with my life. It's been a lot of introspection with this album.
Well, any of that you want to talk about, I'm totally open to hearing. And I'm sure my readers would like to know that as well. So I lived in Logan for two
Oh,
years.
cool.
Right out of college, I was working for a journal,
Hmm.
and I'm not LDS, I'm Catholic.
Okay.
But it was an amazing 2 years, and I had never been immersed in Mormon culture like I was there. And I was mostly, again, I'm a little out of shape at this point in my life, but I was a huge backpacker and hiker, and
Oh,
so
Utah's the place for that,
oh
man.
my gosh, it was and I had a brother in Boise. So
Hmm.
we were hiking all over Utah and Idaho for those 2 years.
Oh,
It was incredible. But yeah, that was my real introduction to Mormonism, to the LDS Church. And it was fascinating. I mean, absolutely fascinating. So anyway, I kind of wondered. I figured if you guys were Salt Lake City and all of that, that there
yep.
might be a kind of connection there. So Riley, did you? I assume you did a mission then.
I actually did not.
Okay.
I got my mission call. I was called to Argentina.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and
Wow.
19 years old at the time. So when I got my mission call, Advent Horizon was doing a lot. We were getting more and more active as a band. We had just released our first album, Immured, at that point, and we were starting to get all these opportunities to play outside of Utah, to travel around the Western United States. We were getting opportunities to open for bigger acts, and there was all this exciting stuff happening, and I really, I was very conflicted about, do I drop all of this? Do I set my entire music career aside and serve the church for 2 years in Argentina and be a missionary? And I put in the papers for it and I got the mission call. And then at some point along the way, I just decided, no, I don't feel right about this. Something inside me is telling me that
Mm,
this is not the right call for me,
yeah.
that music is my calling in life. And if at the time, the way that I saw it, because I was still active in the church, the way I saw it was God is telling me that my calling in life is to be a musician, and that's how I need to serve the world. I'd see it differently now, obviously, but I think it was good that I made that choice because Advent Horizon did go on to do exciting things. And to be honest with you, if I had stepped away from music for a full 2 years at that point and then come back, I don't know that I ever would have been able to resume, like to get the momentum back
Oh,
rolling with my
wow.
music career.
Okay.
Maybe it's
Yeah.
possible, but the majority of people who I know who served missions, who were musicians beforehand, did not come back to being a full-time musician after their mission. They went to school, they got a degree, they got a normal job, they got married, all that stuff. So I'm grateful for the decision I made, but there's also in the back of my mind, there's like a little part of me that's like, man, it would have been really cool to go immerse myself in Argentinian culture for two
Yeah,
years
sure.
and,
Of course.
be fluent in Spanish and all that. There's so much that could have been gained from that as well. But I think that's a little bit of that touches a little bit on the theme of the album of kind of reminiscing on your past and the choices you've made and the things that you have committed yourself to in your life and examining uh kind of like what is important to you now versus what used to be important to you. And I mean it can be hard sometimes to allow yourself to move on from something that holds so much weight in your past, whether that be religion, whether that be a relationship, whether that be a career that you've gone down. We all experience these things in our life. It's not unique to me. And that's kind of a big theme for me with this record, learning how to move on despite the years that you've invested into something previous.
Yeah, that's excellent. So let me ask you in the abstract, Rylee, they'll bring in something practical and concrete as well. I am again I've been a prog guy for forever. I am huge on lyrics.
Yeah.
I love good music, obviously, but for me, lyrics matter. And Neil Peart's I mean,
Oh
I grew
gosh,
up on
yeah.
Neil Peart.
Same.
I mean, so Rush, and I mean, old Genesis, Peter Gabriel Genesis, the lyrics for Supper's Ready, and I mean,
Mhm.
just incredible. And one of the things that I immediately latched on to Advent Horizon were your lyrics. I just was
Cool.
immediately taken with them. And that, again, that's just so important to me. And so why don't you talk about the process of writing the album? And is this album, your new one coming out, does it feel different than previous albums lyrically for you?
Yeah. So that's an interesting question. I don't know that I've ever gotten that question before, as it pertains to lyrics specifically. I appreciate that. Um, so I'm a little bit different. Growing up, I found myself, I was always intensely interested in melody. That's what
Mm,
really grabbed me. And usually melody implies vocals, right? Because usually the melodic
sure.
element of a song will be the voice. So I've always been in love with vocals, but for some reason, I never really paid a lot of attention to lyrics earlier in my life. And it was only in the last maybe 7 or 8 years that I've started really diving into the lyrics behind. I mean, Rush is a prime example. I spent all of my teenage years just immersing myself in Rush and in that
Of
world. And
course.
I knew every word of every song. I sang a lot of them. I would perform them on stage, but I never really stopped to consider like, oh, wait a second. Like the trees is actually telling it's not literally about the trees, like learning like 2112 has deeper meaning and the
Yeah.
trees has deeper meaning. Almost every song Rush ever made, I shouldn't even say almost, it's literally every Rush song has a deeper meaning beyond the surface of what the
Sure.
lyrics are telling you. And Neil Peart was just an absolute master of metaphor and symbolism and all that stuff. And so I've kind of it's interesting when you listen through Advent Horizon's discography, our early albums, Immured and Stagehound, especially Immured, it's kind of a word salad, the lyrics. I don't know if you've had
Mm,
much of a chance to dive into that album yet, but there's
that
not.
that won the least.
Okay, so that album, I still am proud of it, especially considering that we recorded it when we were 18 years old.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's it's fun to listen back to it, and it is a representation of my teenage self, and that's fun. But also, I think it's a universally uh, uh, relatable thing to cringe a little bit at your teenage self. So like while it's fun and I am on some level proud of it, I listen to that album and I go, "Oh man, I was so young, I had so much to learn." And oh man, I can't believe that I wrote these lyrics thinking they were some profound thing, and now I read them and go, oh, it's just literally a word salad. A lot of
Okay.
those words mean nothing. Which there are some exceptions to that. There are a couple of songs on that record that I did write with a purpose, and the lyrics mean something and they tell a story. But by and large, that album just doesn't mean anything. And Stagehound is similar, with the exception of the last four tracks on Stagehound. And this was kind of a turning point for me. So this would be 2015. We were finishing up the writing for Stagehound, and one of the band members, our bass player Kaysen, said, "Hey, I had this idea to write a modern retelling of the Greek myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. Let's try to do that as like a concept piece at the end of this record." So that was the first time that I, as a songwriter,
That's
had
great.
ever had to dissect a
That's
story and
great.
figure out how to put it to music. So if you
Yeah.
listen to Stagehound and listen to the last four tracks, and it's actually tracks. There's 11 songs on the album. It's tracks 8, 9, and 10 that really are the meat of that story, and then track 11 is kind of like an epilogue of sorts. Um, so if you listen to that album, listen to those three tracks, you'll notice it's kind of set in like 1920s in Chicago and New Orleans. There's like gangsters and there's like a pimp and there's a prostitute and there's like a kind of a street urchin guy who's like who like falls in love with this prostitute and he's trying to save her, and like it's this whole story that we concocted that all gets it's way more complex than the lyrics could ever describe. But I listen back to it now and I go, okay, that was the moment where Advent
Yeah.
Horizon was really born in my mind. That was the
Nice.
moment where
Nice.
the meaning in our music emerged and we started becoming something greater than just high school kids writing songs. Um,
Yeah.
so
Rylee,
yeah,
that's great.
I'm very proud of those songs, and from that point forward, everything that I've written for Advent had a purpose and told a story. Cell to Call Home was all about it tells a story of a distant family member of mine who passed away of a drug overdose about a decade ago, and it's telling kind of a it's like inspired by, it's not a direct story of his, but it's kind of in tribute to his story of years of addiction and falling in love and relationships, and but like relationships with people who were also addicted, and the codependency that came out of that, and
Sure.
the spirals of of pulling yourself up out of the cycle of addiction and then gradually falling back into it. And it's kind of a tragedy, actually, but it's a beautiful album. I'm proud of the way that it came out, the way that the lyrics all came together. And it was an interesting experience writing about that, but it was also not my story really.
Sure.
It wasn't
Yeah.
me. It wasn't my personal experience. So I wanted to, with our new album, write something that was more personal experience, like my stories from my life, which is why I ended up finding myself writing about what was going on in my life at the time, which was Kristen and I falling away from our religious upbringing. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell what our albums are about, and I'm excited to see what's next after this, honestly, because
Yeah, I
I'm
am
really
too,
just
Riley.
loving writing with meaning.
Yeah. So in my real life, right, not when I'm zooming with you and having a blast, but in my real life, I'm a history and literature professor. So
Oh,
I mean,
cool.
the words matter. They really matter. And I love that you incorporated myth. I actually just got Stagehound yesterday.
Oh,
It
cool.
came. I ordered it from Bandwagon USA, and it
Yes.
showed up.
Yes.
So yeah, so I have not listened to that one yet. I'm sorry about that, but
No, that's
I'm
okay.
eager. And so those tracks, especially as a guy, I love mythology. I'll really dive into that. So that's great. So let's talk about the new album then.
Mhm.
Tell me how you constructed it. And did you know right away musically that it was going to follow this theme, falling together? And how much did your wife have a role in it?
Yeah. So the new album was the first track, as you know now, is an epic song. It's about 19 minutes long.
Incredible.
And thank you. I'm
Yeah,
really proud of it. It's the first time that we've done anything that was more than 10 minutes. I think Stagehound and Cell to Call Home both had songs that were right at the 10-minute mark, but we haven't done anything that went significantly past 10 minutes before. So I was really excited about that. But that song, most of the pieces of that song were written during the writing sessions for A Cell to Call Home. And as I was writing the music for A Cell to Call Home, these themes for this In a Lone and Dreary World song kept coming up. And as I would write them, I would go, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool!" But I know it doesn't quite fit with A Cell to Call Home, so I kind of put them in my back
hmm
pocket,
Sure.
ready for when we were ready to write. So after Cell to Call Home was released, we kind of had a little bit of a foundation to work off of. And as I said a minute ago, I knew I wanted to write about personal experience for this record, and the personal experience that kind of was the most natural to me was religion at that point, and the experiences I had had. And so I spent a lot of time talking with Mike, our drummer, as well as Kristen, my wife, and kind of formulating my thoughts on and figuring out how I wanted to lay out the album. And what we ended up deciding collectively was that the first song should be a story, and everything after that should be, rather than stories, should be about ideas that are touched upon in the story. So expanding upon
Yeah.
topics and stuff that are brought about in the story. So that epic track is kind of a allegorical story, if you will, that's about somebody emerging from a sheltered community. They've been told their whole lives that the world is a dangerous and deadly place and not to venture out into the dangerous world, but they just have this undeniable, irresistible urge to experience for themselves and see, is the world truly as lone and dreary as I've been raised to believe it is? And they gradually realize that the world is dangerous, but it's also full of beauty and art and culture, and there's
Sure.
so much to experience, and you should take the time to experience the world before you make a decision for yourself, rather than just taking what everybody has told you and going with it. You know, don't take out other people's words for it. Experience the world for yourself, in other words, is kind of the moral of that, I think. And
And
then
that really comes across in the album. There's a
awesome.
sense there's and I say this in the best sense. There's almost a fairy tale element of someone going into the woods and experiencing something magical. And I mean that I'm not trying to be
Cool.
corny. I mean that in the best way.
No,
Like it
dude,
has
I'm a
a
fantasy nerd, so you got me
okay,
right there.
yeah,
I
no, I
love it.
mean it's a there's a Tolkien-esque joy of love and discovery in the album. And that's what, again, when I first heard it, I thought, I cannot believe I had not heard of you guys. I mean, this is fantastic.
Well,
And
thank
I
you.
loved, okay, the one thing I have to say, Riley, and,
Mhm.
and this I'm probably again dating myself. I don't quite get the growling. that you guys do in the lyrics. That's new to me because I'm not a heavy metal guy.
Hmm.
And maybe you can explain that to me a little bit. But I'm hearing a lot of Rush. I'm hearing a lot of
Hmm.
Dream Theater. But then again, I'm hearing what's uniquely Advent Horizon too. So you guys wear your influences very openly, which I think is great. But you're also your own band.
I've always thought that's important, like to because music is a product of its influences. No matter who you are, like anybody who's a songwriter is always going to be writing music. Their output is based on the input that they received earlier in their lives from
Sure.
other artists that they listen to, right? So I've always thought it's important to not try to hide that too much because your influences are a core part of you as a human being, and you may as well, wear that proudly.
Yeah.
But also, it is important to have your own unique identity, and that's been a big part of the Advent Horizon journey is figuring out what is our sound, what is our identity, and I think we're getting closer and closer to finding that formula. Uh,
Oh, you
so
don't
this
think you're there yet?
I mean, like this is the first time that I've ever released an album with Falling Together. This is the first time where I feel like we've we've pretty much accomplished what I had in my head. Like the
That's
vision that I
cool.
had for this album two
Yeah,
years ago when we started, we have pretty much achieved the vision as I hoped we would.
I
So
love
I'm
that.
very, very happy with where we are right now. And of course, as any songwriter will tell you, my newest album is my best album. That's what
Yeah.
everybody
No,
always
no,
says, right?
it should be, right?
Um,
But
but
I
with
love
that,
that you're ready to go on to the next one too and make that even better. That's what we should
well,
all be doing in our lives in everything.
exactly, man. Onward and upward. Like I feel like there's always gonna be room for improvement and growth. And I have a lot to learn, and I've even feel like I've learned a lot in the last couple of years in the process of making this album that the lessons that I've learned in the last couple of years are ones that I'm excited to apply to our future albums. So while I haven't really started writing the next Advent album yet, I am very excited to get to work on it.
Yeah.
As soon as we
Amen.
get this release
That's
process out, I'm going to be, my goal is to get something else out within the next couple of years. So
great.
we'll be working on it. But yeah, I mean, so you asked about the growling. I'm not
Yeah.
really a heavy metal guy myself. I never
Okay.
have been. Like
Yeah.
even growing up, I was always like, it was all like classic prog and new wave was what I grew up on. So
Me too. Yeah.
between Gentle Giant, Genesis, yes, King Crimson, Rush, all those bands, mixed with Tears for Fears and Duran Duran and Depeche
Simple
Mode and
minds.
Simple Minds, all
Yeah.
that stuff. That's what I grew up on,
Yeah.
and nowhere in any of that was there any growling or screaming, right? So I had a very hard time with screaming for a very long time. I hated it. And I think the reason at its root, it took me a long time to realize this, but the reason I didn't like screaming was not because it was too brutal, it was because it took away from the melody of the song.
Yeah.
It got rid of the melodic component and my ear no longer had a melody to latch onto and fall in love with. And so it took me a while to find bands that had screaming that I felt like still scratched my need my itch of a need for melodic content. And the first one that really did that for me was Opeth. When I discovered
Sure.
Opeth, they have several albums. Now, they also have Opeth's earlier discography is way too growly for me. I can't really handle it. But they have several albums starting with Blackwater Park where there is this really interesting, intriguing juxtaposition between beautiful melodic vocals and intense guttural growling. And while I at first hated the growling, I loved the singing so much that I was willing to suffer through the growling to get to the singing parts. But over the years of listening to that, I started to realize that there are times in music where a song demands a level of intensity that cannot be reached just with clean singing. And in those rare moments, growling is the answer, in my opinion. And
Mm.
so while I've been very reluctant in the past to include growling as like a lead vocal element in Advent Horizon songs, there were two places in this album where that happened, where we reached that moment where I said, it doesn't matter how many guitars we throw in here, how many distorted rock organs we throw in, how many harmonized vocals we throw in. None of that will reach the level of intensity that I'm hearing in my head that this part
Yeah.
needs to attain. And growling was the only thing that could do it. So we had my drummer Mike. He's a metalhead. He's got the growls down. So we had him jump into the vocal booth and do all the growls. And I know there's
Oh,
a
so
lot of
that's not you.
no, the growling is
Okay.
not me.
Okay. Okay.
That is Mike. I wish I could say it was me, but I'm not. I don't have a very gritty voice. I don't know if you've noticed in our music. I have a very clean, pretty
Yeah.
voice.
Yeah, you do. You do.
And I love my voice for what it is, but I do wish that I could get that grit naturally, but
Okay.
I don't have it. So Mike did all the screams. And yeah, I know there's a lot of progressive rock fans who really despise harsh vocals like that. I understand that, and I it was a little bit of a conflicting decision for me because I knew that while the choice I was making was a necessary choice to reach what I was hearing in my head, that level of intensity that I wanted, I knew it would also alienate some number of people. And I hate that I had to do that, but also at some point as a songwriter, you gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta do what's in your
Yeah.
head. You gotta live up to the artistic vision.
Yeah, well, and Riley, I hope you don't mind me that I asked you.
Yeah, no.
It intrigued me, and I thought,
Mhm.
okay, what was the decision behind this?
Yeah.
And now that you've explained that to me, when I go back and listen, it'll mean something different to me now. So I really
It's
appreciate that.
the growls are very intentional, very meaningful, and they're done in a way that they did not take away from the melody that I was trying to convey. There is still, I think on Faith's Window, there are clean vocals mixed in with the growling that keep the melody going over the top of it.
Yeah,
And yeah, so my hope is that those who are not fans of growling will suffer through the 45 seconds of combined growling time over an hour-long album.
well, I don't know if you remember, but in oh my gosh, in Talk Talk's last album, in Laughing Stock, they do a like a 1 minute guitar distortion.
Uh-huh.
And it's so jarring, but it actually fits right in the
Yeah.
middle of it. It's like, okay, and it's a very similar kind of effect. So, Riley, I am getting the warning that because again, Zoom is new to me, that they're about to shut down our conversation because
Oh yeah, that's
I
right.
think we only had,
30
but
minute thing.
yeah, and I'm so honored you took this much time to talk to me. That really means a great deal to me. So thank you. So we've got just a couple of minutes left. Is there anything like that you would love? So our site, Spirit of Cecilia, we're basically dedicated to film, literature, and music, and
Cool.
we call ourselves Christian humanist. That
Okay.
is that we're really interested in exploring individual art and creativity, but usually within a moral framework.
Hmm.
So we're not harsh about it, but I mean, that's kind of our general background. So I
Yeah.
just, if you want to comment on where you think your music fits and what you'd like our readers to take away, please, conclude us here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that with this album, while it is about my journey away from organized religion, I don't intend this to be a dig on religion
Sure,
specifically.
that's clear.
I I think more what I intend with this album is just to encourage everybody to make decisions for yourself. Like take in all the information that you can, take in the world, experience it, and then decide for yourself what is meaningful to you and decide for yourself who you want to be as a person and what your moral compass is. And that's very much what I've been trying to do as a human being living this life.
Sure.
We all want to be good people, and we all want to be seen as good and moral and honest people. And I think that it is possible to achieve that in so many different ways within your life, and there's no one true way to be that, if that makes sense.
It makes
You know?
perfect sense. Yeah.
So yeah, and you know that I'm so grateful to you for taking the time to talk about all of this. It's been an absolute joy talking with you. Thank you, and thank you for the
Yeah,
thoughtful
Riley, thank you.
questions too.
Oh,
Um,
good. I'm glad you liked them.
and yeah, May 15th, the album is out. Go to our website, adventhorizonmusic.com, and there's links where you can pre-order the album right there. And anybody who's in Utah, come see us on May 22nd. We have an album release show. It'll be a fun party.
Tell us, where's that at?
That's at a place called the Pearl on Main in Midvale, Utah. And we'll be doing that show. There's also another one that we're about to announce on June 13th in San Francisco. And then we're
Great.
trying to do more shows on the East Coast later this year, but I don't have anything I can announce on that front yet.
Okay. All right. Well, gosh, I would love to stay in contact, Riley,
Absolutely.
and anything that we can promote. I now consider myself a faithful Advent Horizon fan. So,
Yes.
so again, thanks so much for your time. This has been great.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brad.